We're up to our entire interview with Buck Dharma, one of the last two guys standing for Blue Oyster Cult. Eric Bloom is the other guy. And on this one, we cover a lot of ground. We talk about Alan Lanier, who we lost a few years ago, who was their keyboardist and guitarist. The songs on Ghost Story, some of the covers they did. There was a Beatles cover on there, Eric Burdon and the Animals, and an MC5 cover as well. We talk about all the hits and a lot more with Buck Dharma on Rock History Book. Blue Oyster Cult, a pioneering American rock band, was formed in 1967 in Stony Brook, New York. Their initial name was Soft White Underbelly, and their classic lineup included Donald Buck Dharma Rozier on lead guitar and vocals, Albert Bouchard on drums and vocals, Alan Lanier on keyboards and rhythm guitar, Eric Bloom on lead vocals and guitar, and Joe Bouchard was the bass player and a vocalist. Their lineup included so many genre bends: heavy metal, psychedelic, progressive rock, and in the beginning garnered a real good cult following in the New York area. But they soon caught the attention of manager Sandy Pearlman. He helped them secure a deal with Columbia Records, and their self-titled debut album was released in 1972, showcasing their electric style and darkly poetic lyrics, laying down the groundwork for their future success. Even non-Blue Oyster Cult fans would know the album Agents of Fortune, which of course featured the iconic lineup. It was the band's fourth studio album, released in 1976, and it was a major turning point in their career. This was the time where the band embraced a more polished and accessible sound, blending hard rock and pop sensibilities. Agents of Fortune became a huge commercial success, largely due to that song, which would later be known as the Cowbells song, which we'll get into in a second, that would be featured on Saturday Night Live, giving it a whole new life. Don't Fear the Reaper. Written by Buck Dharma, the song has a haunting melody and existential lyrics. It captured the imagination of a large audience. Don't Fear the Reaper reached number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100 and remains a staple on classic rock radio. Another was Godzilla, released in 1977 from Spectres. Godzilla is sort of a tongue-in-cheek tribute to the famous Japanese monster. It, again, was written by Buck Dharma, and the song features one of those real driving riffs, powerful lyrics, describing the creature's destructive rampage. It became a fan favorite, and it's known for its powerful guitar solo. It's also really catchy. Burnin' For You from 1981 and Fire of Unknown Origin, another huge song for the band. It was co-written by Buck Dharma and Richard Meltzer. And this song is what this band does really well when they want to get a bit more commercial, giving it a melodic rock approach and introspective lyrics. The track became a top 40 hit, reaching number 40 on the Hot 100, and was bolstered by a heavy rotation on MTV. Overall, Blue Oyster Cult's legacy is firm in the rock and roll history books, combining some great pop at times, a lot of rock, and metal genres. The band was always well known for complex arrangements, fantastic lyrics, and a willingness to experiment. That's what set them apart from their contemporaries. Now the resurgence of Blue Oyster Cult's song Don't Fear the Reaper. It was significantly influenced by a sketch on Saturday Night Live that aired on April 8th, 2000. The sketch was known as More Cowbell, and it became an iconic moment in pop culture, revitalizing interest in that one song and the band. In the sketch, actor Christopher Walken plays a music producer, Bruce Dickinson, and he's overseeing the recording of the song Don't Fear the Reaper. Will Ferrell portrays Gene Frankel, a fictional cowbell player who's very enthusiastic about playing excessive cowbell, which becomes the focal point of the whole skit. Now, despite the band's attempts to focus on the overall recording of the song, Walken's character insists that the track needs more cowbell. Walken delivers that now iconic famous line, "Guess what? I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell." Now, the humor, of course, and the absurdity of the skit really struck a chord with fans, and it's become one of the most famous Saturday Night Live skits of all time. And that's when Don't Fear the Reaper had a resurgence. People wanted to hear it. And now it's ingrained in pop culture for a whole other reason. Came up with the name Ghost Stories.
I did, actually. We were casting around for a title, and I threw that out there. I just, when I listen to these songs, they feature the original members of the band, of course, and Alan Lanier is no longer with us. And, I didn't imagine what the cover wound up looking like with three ghosts on it, but I just thought that it would be like, the old grandpa or the uncle with the dusty book, with the young kids around him, telling these spooky stories of yesterday, So that was my idea. But anyway, I think it's an apt title for the record.
And everyone likes a reunion. It doesn't always happen. It's not a perfect world. Rick Emmett of Triumph once told me, he says, "Do you want to go on tour with your ex-wife?" And sometimes it is like that. But how did Albert and Joe get back in?
Yeah, well, when the idea of doing restoring and burnishing these historic pre-production recordings came up, I know Steve Shank talked to Albert and Joe Bouchard, and they were down with it. They liked the idea, and we all cooperated on it, and it was a very pleasant and rewarding experience.
When I talked to Pete Agnew of Nazareth, I said, "Pete, is it still Nazareth?" He says, "Well, it is. If fans are coming, it's still Nazareth or the
Right.
incarnation of Nazareth." How do you look at all that stuff?
Well, I guess if it's still Pete, it's still Nazareth. We've been friends with Nazareth for a long time, and we've had just wonderful times over the years.
Do you have a take on the Guess Who Burton Cummings thing?
That band is a powerhouse of creativity, you know, and whether or not they ever work together as far as Burton and Bachman, that could happen, I suppose. But if it doesn't, it's okay, and if it does, that's to the good.
Long-term relationships. Well, let's segue to that. You and Eric Bloom, it didn't have to work. I know it's not always pretty, but going back that long with one guy, what is it about you two making it work?
I think we've just got a real practical, cordial relationship, and we we work together fairly easily, and it's never really been contentious. So it's I don't even think about it. I don't think he does either.
Mr. Lanier, we lost him a little while ago. How would you describe him?
Um, the the original chemistry of Blue Oyster Cult is uh, unique in the sense like every band is. You don't really know what you're getting. You're not really choosing members, with any kind of scientific precision, at least in our case. We just all fell together. So the personalities were a unique stew. It's Alan's style and influences and life are different than everybody else's. And in a lot of ways you don't really understand them until they're gone, and then you look back on it. You can really look back in hindsight and see what exactly Alan's contribution was, and and now it's just nostalgic and just miss them.
Kick out the jams. Um, that is like the song that everyone knows, but it's close to your guys' heart, of course.
Yeah, we admired the MC5 at the time, and to have that song come out now, I think is just I'm quite proud of it. It sounds great to me. I think it does the band and their memory proud, and to people that haven't heard it or even be up on the MC5, that's here, listen to this, fellas and gals, check this out.
We got to get out of this place. Barry Mann, Cynthia Wilde, but of course, the Animals. Tell me about. Did you guys do that in clubs?
Yes, we did play that in clubs. Yep. And we would play it. We'd play it as Blue Oyster Cult once in a while, and if we had the situation, especially when we would do a club gig or something like that, we would do that. But yeah, I mean, it's an affection, it is. The uh the Animals, when they came out at the time, was right about the time that Blue Oyster Cult was forming, and I know Eric has met Eric Burden, and had some conversation with him. And again, it's just we did we it was lucky that we recorded it, put it that way.
Of the reasons I love Blue Oyster Cult. I like the fact I liked variety. I like the fact that everyone sang. I mean, some people sang more than others. You came up with some big ones in that band, but that was as a real music fan. When you came up with an album, I'd be the guy looking in the back going, wow, this is cool. Who sings what? What's going on? Um, was that always a conscious thing, or was that just all the creativity coming out of the guys?
Yeah, well, I think, we modeled ourselves on the Beatles, who all sang, at least George and Paul and John. And so we didn't think it was weird that we more than one of us sang. It made it hard to market the band, I think, for the record companies. And you could see, how bands that just have a very defined roles of the members, is it's easier to, get a grip on and a consistency. But anyway, you're stuck with Blue Oyster Cult and what they did. That's just the way we did it. And yeah, and also as far as the variety goes, yeah, we didn't want to bore ourselves, and everybody had a different sensibility for writing and singing. So, we were always a cooperative in that regard.
When you left home, when you said, that's it, mom and dad, I'm taking my pots and pans, I'm leaving. When you left home, that young man, what was
Yeah.
in that young man's record collection?
Um, at that point, I didn't have many records because I was sort of on my own. I didn't take a lot of stuff, but I had come from surf music as a high schooler. Yeah, I didn't really even start listening to words and music until I had met Sandy Pearlman and had what I perceived as the opportunity to be a recording artist. It never occurred to me myself until I met Sandy that you could do that. So, um, so I came out of instrumental music. I was always I listened to pop radio and rock and roll radio, and then the blues. When the English artists started covering the American blues artists, then you go back to the source. So that was that, and the psychedelic bands coming out of San Francisco in the mid '60s. That was a big influence on me and us. So we were, like every groundbreaking record, the Cream, Jimi Hendrix, the Doors, the Grateful Dead, all these bands that were coming out, were really influential to where we were. The Softwood Underbelly, which preceded the Blue Oyster Cult, we thought of ourselves as a psychedelic band, an East Coast psychedelic band.
I just did a thing on Cream last night because I interviewed Malcolm, Jack Bruce's son. And it's interesting. Every time I go back and circle back and do something on those three guys, I learn so much more if you dig deeper in how influential they were. And then you talk to people my age sometimes, and they'll know, and some don't know. And the thing I always say, you could have 1,000 years and you don't have enough time, even if you have Spotify or whatever you choose, to basically discover everything. There's just so much music in all of our pasts.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. I think, and that's you could extend that metaphor to life in general. There's just way more than you could possibly, it must have been nice, when you were a farmer, your grandpa was a farmer and you'd be a farmer, and that would you know what your life was, from the get-go. But the pace of change now is just ridiculous.
Remember, Jagger said, "Oh, I thought the Stones would last like 2, 3 years because when you're a young man, obviously, no young man thinks about being 50. It's not advantageous to do that, and your brain's not wired that way." What about you in the band? I mean, it's
Yeah,
been
no, I mean, I thought I was very fortunate, to get a recording contract with Columbia when we of Columbia's Blue Oyster Cult, but I thought, yeah, we'd make a record, two, maybe three, and then, I'd do something else for the rest of my life. It didn't work out that way.
Outside of music, what are you best at?
As a commentator, probably. I've got an opinion about stuff,
Well, you
but
got the voice for it.
yeah, but at the time, I thought if BOC, failed or stopped selling records or something, I wanted to go into the recording aspect of it because that's always, intrigued me. And so I would have tried to be a record producer, when record production was a thing, that I could grasp. The producers today, I wouldn't know how to create a commercially viable sound in 2024. I have no idea how to do it. I just know what I know.
With the original with George, the engineer who originally worked with you, he was involved in this process, right?
Oh yeah, well he recorded the pre-production sessions and he retained the tapes for all these years. And at some point he digitized them. I don't know when it was. And I know if his tapes are like my tapes, you have to bake them. You have to actually heat them at low temperature and relatively careful surroundings, and you'll get, one play out of them before they gum up again and are unusable. So he did that. He digitized the tapes. Some of them were damaged. Some of them had parts replaced, because they were just dropouts and you know actual technical issues. So um, yeah, without George, there wouldn't have been any Ghost Stories record. So
Who really played the cowbell on Don't Fear the Reaper? Because I've had a lot of people on tape telling me the Bouchard brothers gave me one take, and I go online, I hear something else.
then the idea was definitely David Lucas's. David Lucas is the real Bruce Dickinson. As far as that sketch goes. He was one of the three producers on Agents of Fortune. The other guys being Murray Krugman and Sandy Pearlman, and David was the most musical guy. The the nuts and bolts musical guy of the three of them. And after we recorded the track, he just said, okay, let's just be nice if there's some little glue going on down there with the cowbell. Of course, the whole premise of the sketch is just so ridiculously funny. So, but yeah, and I think he played the cowbell, but Albert thinks he did. So I don't know. I wasn't there when the cowbell was recorded. What can I say?
That's interesting now, and it's been going on since the 80s and probably before that, where a song can be featured in something and all of a sudden a new generation discovers it. How did that feel with the SNL thing?
Arguably, it's the best publicity we've had in 20, 30 years. But you know, the cowbell is a ball and chain, for Blue Oyster Cult. We're stuck with it. You can't get away from it. So, we just ride with it.
Where did you come up with that? Like, where does that come from in your mind? And B, do you fear the Reaper?
Do I fear it? Well, I know where I am on the Ferris wheel of life, I know which car I'm on, so when my time comes, I definitely want Don't Fear the Reaper, played on nonstop at my funeral,
You
and
know what car you're on. I've never heard it described that way before.
yeah, yeah, well, when you're on a Ferris wheel, right? And it goes around, they give you like, 10, maybe 10, revolutions, and then the car stops and people start getting off and other people start getting on, and you know where you are as far as how long you got before you get off, So
How'd the song come up?
how how did well, I don't know. I don't know if I had a conscious thought about writing something that was sort of spooky, but the story was just you know, it's a love story that transcends the death of the guy. The guy dies, right? But he finds a way to come back. Is what happens, and they go with the girl to another place. It's not where we are, but it's a real place. And that maybe was a fantasy of mine. Just imagining that there was another plane of existence. There was an afterlife for this one. That's basically what it was.
Do you still believe that?
I was hoping there was. I like to, yeah. I mean, I'm open. I'm open that it's nothing. That would just crumble. But I'd like to, I'd like to think that there's that. We don't know everything. I think it's demonstrative that we do not know everything. We're smug about a lot of things, but I think there's a lot of things out there that we have just no concept of.
You have a song in your repertoire that you wrote that is another big one. Godzilla is one of those songs that goes kids love it on a primal level, just the way maybe the phrasing of it, maybe why do you think that song is it's a primal song. There's a primal something going on about it.
Yeah, well, I was a huge fan of the first Toho movie that Hollywood had dubbed Raymond Burr into, to for the English speaking audience, So that's, I mean, that's why I wrote that song. I mean, that was before the revival of Godzilla as a film franchise, That was before any of that, But uh, my grandsons love it, they think it's great, They also like Bear McCreary's version. Bear, did the music for the two Godzilla movies ago, and I had met him, at that point over the phone and become friends since. But they like his version too, which has got the taiko drums and the chorus, the male chorus in there. Godzilla,
Yeah.
they love it. So yeah, I mean it's great.
You've met a lot of people through the years and you've hung out with a lot of people. And outside of the band, who do you consider? Who is there someone that you'd met? You go, now there's a rock star. Do you even think that way? Where, some people said, oh, I met Alice Cooper or I met Brad Delp of Boston when he was alive or whatever. But do you have someone that if I asked you, who's the rock star guy who kind of lives it?
I don't know. I thought Kiss were really good rock stars, and I met Kiss, back when they were starting out, but they understand what it's like to be a rock star. At the peak of our rock stardom, I personally felt a little uncomfortable in that persona, I don't think I was ever cut out to be, the 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 larger than life person, And when you talk to Alice Cooper, Alice Cooper's a great rock star, but off off stage, he's just Alice. He's just a regular guy like we are.
Well, what's the craziest thing a fan's ever done to you? I remember thinking you were the coolest looking dude I've ever seen. I remember going, this guy, he looks like a dude. He looks like he's in his body. That was my impression of you.
Well, thank you. Because I have no concept, of it, self concept or in the moment. It's just what you see is what you get, pretty much.
Burning for You to me was one of the catchiest songs of the 80s. I freaking love that song. That's one of those songs that when I heard, I know you co-wrote it, I stopped what I was doing, and there's like maybe 1,000 songs like that for me because I'm a music lover and I'm a radio guy. But I remember
Yeah,
stopping and
yeah.
going, what the hell? Who's that? And I had no idea it was you guys. Tell me about that song.
Yeah, I originally wrote that for my solo record, Flat Out, and Sandy Pearlman, he convinced me to let Blue Oyster Cult do it, and it was probably a good idea in that it probably reached a much bigger audience with Blue Oyster Cult than it would have on my record. But I'm glad I did. Yeah. It was Richard Meltzer's, in my opinion, most sentimental lyric. It's about as close as he got to sentimental. And I found out years later that he'd caged several of the lines from Jack Kerouac's On the Road, that's, just lifted the metaphors in that, in the lyric form.
Well, you went to a great source.
Yeah, yeah, which is a homage, and I do that a lot too, especially live playing. I'll play a quote from famous lead or a famous melody, just to as an homage to the source.
Well, If I Fell, the Beatles,
Yeah.
you chose to end it with that. Tell me about your cover of that. It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, we that was from the time period when Kasim Sultan was on bass and vocals, and we would warm up with that song in the dressing room, just to get our vocal cords going. We'd just sing some harmonies and get everybody in on it. So we had done a TV special for the 40th anniversary of Ages of Fortune, and that's one of the things we'd done as a video. There's a video on it too, but it was just the band members and two acoustic guitars, me and Richie, and Jules played a cajon drum, and it just laid fallow for a while because I guess there was some rights question that the TV people didn't want to have to pay the Beatles or something. I don't know. There's some it wasn't not our decision. But anyway, so when Ghost Stories came up, they said, why not put this on, even though it's the oddball track? So we did.
Where did Buck Dharma come from?
Back in the early days, we considered pseudonyms, and I'm the only fellow that liked a pseudonym. So I like being Buck Dharma. I like having an alter ego. It served me well.
To you, who is the greatest rock vocalist of all time?
That's tough. Who comes to mind is Robin Zander. I think he's as good as anybody. And I would like to hear Robin sing some more challenging material, but every time he opens his mouth, I'm down.
Listen, if you want to support the channel, please do. We have a link in the description where you can make a donation to Rock History Music, Rock History Book. We're trying to buy a whole bunch of new mics for all three of our studios. And join our Patreon, get early access to all our videos. Links to Blue Oyster Cult and a lot more in the description. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History